If you ever felt too weird for this world, this lunation reminds you, maybe the world was wrong. This full moon in Aquarius occurs in the morning of August 9th in most time zones in the world, and the full moon phase will continue through August 12th. There's a handful of powerful planetary alignments during this lunation. Most notably is a grand trine in the early degrees of the air signs, where we have Uranus in Gemini, Mars in Libra, and Pluto in Aquarius, all trine to each other, creating a big triangle in the sky, essentially. What caught my eye initially is that Uranus, in that trine to Pluto in Aquarius, during the Aquarian full moon, Uranus is the planet that rules Aquarius. So although Uranus and Aquarius aren't completely interchangeable, there is some overlap in meaning and great affinity between them, creating a massive theme in the sky right now. As usual with these archetypes, these operate on multiple levels simultaneously. And collectively, when we contemplate Uranus entering Gemini, which it just did very recently here, and it will continue to be in the sign till 2033, plus we have Pluto in Uranus's sign of Aquarius, it will be in Aquarius all the way until like 2044. With these slower moving planets, these really connect to major generational changes for the collective. And in the case of Uranus in Gemini plus Aquarius, we're looking at an extreme rapid growth in a technological revolution where it's been estimated that within about 10 to 25 years, we will evolve, technologically speaking, much more or as much as we have throughout the entirety of the human species. Now, whether or not we manifest a more utopian technological future or a dystopian technological future depends on the choices we make and our average level of consciousness across the collective. But let's look at these archetypes from a slightly different perspective. One of the names for Uranus is the Great Awakener. And for Aquarius, the sign it rules, it's known as the rebel archetype, the genius, and the criminal. I want you to imagine a 14-year-old boy who doesn't seem to fit into any box. He feels alienated and misunderstood. His peers, his teachers, even his own parents and family are constantly criticizing him. This kid suffers from constant rejection, betrayal, and abandonment. He feels like an outsider or an exile, even within the walls of his own home. This is because he was born way ahead of his time. The way he thinks, feels, and the actions he takes is way out of alignment from cultural expectations. He carries a uniqueness within him that is grossly misunderstood, and he's criticized by others over and over and over again. Now, people out there who have strong Aquarian energy in their chart, that's part of their soul contract in this lifetime, is to learn the lesson of the rebel and the genius. At a certain point, he gets fed up with his reality and his attitude, his actions, and even the clothes he puts on his body seem to be in direct opposition to what is suggested of him. He begins to escape his house outside his window and roam the streets at night, marking up walls with graffiti, because in part he's lashing out against authority, but it's also an outlet for his creative genius. He will eventually hit a point in his high school years where he can find healthy outlets for his creative genius or destructive ones. Depending on the level of suffering this kid has endured, combined with the age and wisdom of his soul, he can either become the healthy embodiment of the genius, sharing his uniqueness, rippling out into the field of the collective, helping us to evolve and ushering us into this Aquarian age. Or the pressures to conform will be too much, the trauma's too great, and he will buckle under the pressure. He becomes cool, distant, aloof. He turns to drugs or theft or any other way that rejects this cruel world of judgmental sheep. This is often the crossroads for somebody bearing the cross of Aquarius. This is a story of rebellion, one that can be constructive or destructive, depending on the level of consciousness of the individual working with these energies. Now, for humanity during this time, rebellion against authority and oppression is at peak levels. The teenager I described sees his high school as one of those systems of oppression, and he thinks to himself sarcastically, hey, how about we just teach everybody in the exact same way and assume everybody learns in the same way? We're going to force you for 12 to 16 years to regurgitate information over and over and over again, much of which you'll never remember or ever use on a practical level in your life. And oh yeah, let's greatly discourage critical thinking skills and train these humans to essentially be worker bees for the queen. The kid feels trapped, unheard, unseen, and a slave to the system of oppression. Collectively, we are slaves. And of course, slave consciousness operates on many different levels. It may not be literal slavery as we think of it, but it is a manifestation of slave consciousness. We just have a much bigger jail cell with a better view. Uranus in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius, highlighted by this grand trine to Mars during the Aquarius full moon. This is a key evolutionary path for humanity now, and this is happening during the technological revolution, so the stakes are very high. We are careening at light speed towards this more utopian or dystopian technological future. This is the biggest factor contributing to the timeline we co-create. How much oppression and control are we willing to endure? Are we willing to move forward with more love and hope for a better future by quietly rebelling against authority, by no longer taking part in the game? This is how we flip the script. We question authority not through prideful aggression, but through an unflinching, investigative presence, like a journalist who has his morals in check, who eagerly and passionately seeks the truth. The power of collective consciousness is world-changing. It's been scientifically proven that groups of meditators can literally reduce crime over a period of time. This was proven in the 1993 study in Washington, D.C. of transcendental meditators, where they reduced the crime by 23%. It's a very fascinating study. Look it up if you want some inspiration. A slave master on a foundation in Louisiana in 1833, what did he fear the most? He feared groups of his slaves rebelling against him. He feared collective consciousness. So too, the power brokers of the world, what they fear most is the power of collective consciousness and shared loving intention. They don't fear our weapons, they fear our oneness. Their primary way of fighting this is manipulating our perception of reality through fear consciousness and using that as a control mechanism. Also, they keep large groups of people constantly fighting with each other, and they turn collective consciousness against us. Uranus represents a defiant energy. Here it is in the sign of Gemini, the sign of perception. One core evolutionary intention of this is we're trying to cleanse our perception of reality by removing our attention from their manipulation, namely corporate-controlled media, which thankfully is dying because they become parody of themselves. These are propaganda-spewing indoctrination machines. We are being called to silently rebel against various systems of control by leveraging more discernment on what we choose to click on. We either follow the herd off the algorithmic cliff, or we take back our minds, sending those demons running, pig-formed, off the cliff into the sea. Another big event that's happening in the sky is Mercury opposed Pluto. Now, Mercury has been in retrograde, but from our perspective on Earth, it's slowing down in the sky. It's what's called stationing. And whenever a planet's stationing, it's at maximum power. And in a couple days after the full moon, it's going to start going direct. As this is happening, it's in a direct opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. If we use predictive astrology, which is totally valid, This event is classic for truth bombs, truth coming to light, darkness surfacing, disclosures, whistleblowers, etc., even mental obsessions, especially with all the Aquarian rebellious energy involved, linked to conspiracy theories. There's ways to work with this on a personal level, but I'll talk about that more towards the end of this video. Moving forward, one of the most challenging aspects in the sky right now is the two so-called malefic planets in opposition with each other. So we have Mars, the god of war, known as the lesser malefic, opposed Saturn, the greater malefic. Saturn represents the wall. Mars represents the charging warrior. So we have the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object, and it's not always a happy rendezvous. This is a classic event for triggering of an escalation within military conflicts or assassination attempts. More on a psychological level, it does very much have a very tense energy, a weighty and oppressive energy, also kind of push-pull, trying to accelerate with the brakes on. There is a much more powerful, life-enhancing way of working with this event, but I'll speak more about that later. We add in Neptune, which adds a more illusory effect, where there can be just rage flinging in random directions without really a target or perhaps an illusory one. This combination seems to be asking us, is this battle real or projected? Are you fighting evil or your own confusion? An important question to ask at this point is, how do I work with these energies on a personal level? What I'm doing here is a generalized reading to the public. If you want a more detailed analysis of your own chart and what's going on for you, I recommend a personal reading. What is happening is a great awakening. That's the spirit of Uranus connected to Aquarius. We are being invited to connect on a deeper level with our own individuality, our authentic self. We have a soul personality, our true essence, which is a very singular expression, much like a snowflake. We are all so unique based on the hundreds or even thousands of lifetimes we've each had. And then we just have our human soup, a collection of our experiences of external pressures from culture, society, the larger framework of history, and the time we were born into, what I call our acquired personality. So the Great Awakening is a deeper connection to our inner self, our higher self, if you will. And there's kind of a simple hack of working with this, which is to contemplate deeply about what is exciting for you in your life. And if there's nothing, if it's all boredom and tedium and slave consciousness, which I'm sure some people are experiencing that, it's like, okay, I need to create more excitement in my life and to think deeply about, are there some new directions I can take that would inject more excitement into my heart so that I can feel more enlivened? Conversely, where do I feel stuck, boring, blech, dull? And as you go towards what's exciting and remove what isn't, just experientially, you will naturally shed some of that cultural glop and be in alignment with that higher self. Enter Mercury opposed Pluto, the truth bomber. This is a great opportunity to do some deep excavation of your psyche and find where you feel grief or shame or guilt regarding your ideas, which has created some sort of internal fear or resistance in you in speaking up your unique ideas or expressing your own unique genius. Now, in regards to Mars opposed Saturn and Neptune in Aries, there's a lot of warrior energy here. Mars, the war god, opposed the two planets in Aries, which is the sign that Mars rules. We sprinkle in some Neptune, which is the classic mystic archetype. Saturn is the planet of commitment and diligence and hard work. We throw those all together. This is the hard work of the manifestation of the spiritual warrior archetype. And one of the most powerful ways of working with this is to commit to a consistent daily spiritual practice to, on your own will and decision-making, powerfully raise your level of spiritual consciousness so you're no longer affected by external noise. And with Mars and Aries, when we talk about spiritual practices, I recommend something a little bit more active and dynamic and etheric, which is kind of a blending of meditation and physical exercise where you combine breath work with attention, concentration, and visualization to increase the health of your physical, emotional, and mental bodies using some sort of etheric-based practice. The one I recommend actually is Qigong. I'll put a link below for a practice that I think is one of the best. And this is connected to the school that created a medicineless hospital in China. And if you go Google or do a YouTube search on the phrase Greg Braden tumor disappearing, you'll actually see 3 Qigong doctors or energy healers chanting for this person who has terminal cancer, and you'll see the tumor disappear on the screen. The Qigong set I recommend is from that very lineage. And on the note of healing, this is very important, and this isn't something I've mentioned yet in this video. Yes, we have the 2 malefics opposed to each other, which can be quite problematic and challenging, but we also have the 2 so-called benefics holding hands in the sky. We have Jupiter, the greater benefic, in a strong conjunction with Venus, the lesser benefic, both in the sign of the healer, Cancer. Now, Jupiter expands anything it touches. Here it is in the sign of the healer. Jupiter is an encouraging force. It wants us to believe in ourselves, wants us to ask ourselves the question, how am I underestimating myself? When it's in Cancer, how am I underestimating my capacity to heal? And Venus adds some interesting insight on how to actually accomplish that self-healing and self-love, because Venus is known as the goddess of peace. So it is about establishing a certain level of inner calm, tranquility, and serenity as a healing commitment. And here we are amidst the chaos. The question becomes, the evolutionary challenge is, can I become the eye of the storm? No matter what's going on around me, can I remain in my center, and can I make a perpetual peace treaty with chaos? When we do this work on a personal level, we benefit and others benefit around us because we heal, we raise our consciousness that ripples out into the field. We create that strong attractor field for this healing, loving energy, and we create a net positive in the world instead of getting lost in the chaos and adding to the net negative. That teenage rebel lives in all of us now, the part of us that refuses to trade truth for approval. We are invited to become ourselves, to become an individualistic blast of our essence. And the more we do that, the more we will embrace a more liberated, decentralized human future, one that is not going to conform to the expectations of others and certainly the powerful in the world. And we can co-create this more utopian timeline. These are the core evolutionary intentions, with the goal being to expand our consciousness.